In this video, I'm going to be going over the project template that I use for my data science projects. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Leon. So every time I go back to my really old data science projects, I always struggle to understand what I was doing at that time. And if I can't understand what I was doing, then I'm pretty sure nobody else will be able to understand my work as well. That's a big problem, especially if I want to share some of the older work that I've done, or if I want to look back and reuse some of the older projects. It becomes very difficult. Back when I was a student, nobody really cared about having a proper project structure, and it's understandable. But if you're working professionally as a data scientist, I think it becomes important because you're working with other data scientists, or you're working with other analysts or whatever. It's not just about you anymore, and having a proper project structure basically allows you to work together much more efficiently. And so you need something that's flexible and reproducible in a logical way. There's even Python libraries dedicated to automating this entire process. A very popular one is called Cookie Cutter that a lot of data scientists use. Now, I'm not going to cover anything like that in this video. I think it's more important just to build a good habit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you the template that I use, and essentially I just copy and paste that template every time I do a new project. I think it's good enough for me. So if you're looking for something more serious, then I'm not going to be covering that in this video. If you're interested in learning more about the template that I'm using in detail, then what I'll do is I'll link in the description box down below to the original guide as well. What I'm going to do is go over the reasons and benefits of having a proper project structure, and then I'll go through an old project that I did using the project structure that I use most of the time, and I'll go over that at a high level. I'll also put the timestamps up here so you can skip ahead if you want to. Let's get right into it. So one of the reasons is efficiency. Now, let's say you want to revisit an old project that you did a while ago. Could be a lot of different reasons why you want to do that. Maybe there's some code that you want to reuse, or maybe you're looking for some data, or maybe you're looking for some old parameters that you use to train a particular machine learning model. Could be a lot of different reasons, but basically, if you went back to that project, but everything is just clumped together in a single folder, then you're going to be wasting a lot of time trying to find that thing that you're looking for. I've had experience doing this before, and it's not fun. You end up spending hours having to go through your notebooks and bits and pieces of code, and you just end up wasting so much time that you could have saved by just having a proper project structure. Another reason is data management. So a big part of data science is really just cleaning data and getting it into the correct usable format. Having a proper structure means that you'll have a clear view of the entire data pipeline, and you'll have separation of the raw data from the intermediate data and then the final process data. The reason you want to do that is because if something goes wrong in the data processing pipeline, which usually something will go wrong, then you'll know exactly where the issue occurred, and you can go in there and fix that as quick as possible. The next one is reproducibility. So basically, you or anybody else should be able to reproduce your results using your project with exactly the same configurations. The reason for that is because if you can't reproduce your results, then this means that you don't have a consistent framework. And if you don't have a consistent framework, then nobody's really going to believe in what you're doing. So it's really important to have a reproducible project so that you can gain trust. And also, if you can reproduce your current results, that also means that you can reproduce your previous results, and then you can compare your results and evaluate your project in a scientific way. The next one is collaboration. So I think this one's easy to forget. As data scientists, we usually like to just get the data and do our own thing. However, if you're working in a team, then it becomes especially important to be able to collaborate efficiently. Having a proper project structure basically means everybody knows where everything is, everybody knows how to contribute and detect any changes being made by other team members, and everything just flows together much more smoothly. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go over an old project that I did a while ago using the same project template that I usually use for my projects. I've got a link in the description box down below to the original guide that I based my template off of, and I'm just going to go over at a high level what each folder does and how it all fits together. The first folder is called conf, and this stands for configuration. So basically in here I store all the parameters that I use for my machine learning models or my experiments, and everything is generated automatically in here. So within the code, every time I run an experiment, it will store the parameters into this folder here. So whenever I want to look at an older model or an older configuration, I know exactly where to look at, and I'll just come in here and I'll load up one of the files, and there you go. I've got my old configurations loaded, ready to be used in my project. So the next one is called data, and I think it's fairly obvious. In here, I basically store all my data that I need for my project. But if I open that up, you'll notice that there's quite a lot of subfolders, and that's because, like I said earlier, we need a clear view of the data at each stage of the data processing pipeline. And so if there's anything wrong with, for example, the intermediate steps of that pipeline, I can quickly go into this folder, this intermediate folder, and I can start playing with that particular data set and seeing, what the issue might be. If I didn't have these folders, then it makes it very difficult to remember, which data set is for which part of the pipeline, and it gets very messy very quickly. The next one is called notebooks. So in here, I'll just store my Jupyter notebooks that I used for my project, and I've got a bunch in here already. You might notice the naming convention seems a bit strange, but it's quite simple really. What I'll basically do is every time I create a new notebook, I'll have the date that I created the notebook on, I'll have my initials, and then I'll also have what I'm doing in that notebook as part of the title as well. So if I'm doing modeling, I'll call it modeling. If I'm making predictions, I'll call it make predictions, and so on. This means that if I'm working with another data scientist, I'll never confuse my work with theirs. If I want to find an older notebook, it's very easy for me to do so. And if I want to find, if I want to just make predictions, I can just look for the ones with make predictions in the title, and I can just filter out everything else. And then there's these two folders that I didn't use for this particular project, but basically you have this references folder where you can store your reference material in. For example, if there's a guide that you want to share with other people, you can put that in there. And then there's also a results folder, which I think is fairly self-explanatory. Any other results from your experiments that you think is worthy of sharing, you can put that in this results folder so that you can find them later on. And then there's this final folder called SRC, which means source. This is where I store the code that I'll use in my notebooks. Essentially, I've kept the code separated from my notebooks as much as possible. And the reason for that is because I want the project to be as easily reusable as possible. So in the future, if I want to go back in here and reuse a function, I can easily do that by going into this source folder and then accessing the code from there. So if I open up this source folder, basically you'll find a bunch of subfolders in there, and they keep the functions organized into their appropriate categories. So if I want to access functions that I made for reporting specifically, then I'll know where to look. I'll go into this reporting folder. As an example, I'll go into this intermediate folder, which represents the functions that I use in the intermediate part of the data pipeline. And you can see I've created this function here called create XGBoost split. And so if I needed that for another project, it's very easy for me to just copy and paste that into that new project. If I want to make changes to this function, all I have to do is open it in an editor like PyCharm, and then I'll get this pop up. I know it's much easier to just write the code in the notebook and then just leave it there. However, if you can separate it like this from the notebooks and everything else, it means that in the future, if you want to come back and reuse stuff, it's so much easier because you'll just come here and then you can just copy and paste this into your new project. And then just to show you as an example of everything working together, if I open up the data processing notebook in the notebooks folder, you can see in this second cell, I'm basically importing this function in here, right, into this notebook. So this create XGBoost split is being imported in this line here. Right, and then if I scroll down, you can see it's much nicer having the code separated because I can clearly see what I'm trying to do. So, for example, in here in this cell, I'm getting the features from the config folder. I'm feeding that in, and then what I'm doing is I'm creating a test train split using that create XGBoost split, which is this function here, and then that's it, right? Like, I can just see clearly what I'm doing, and then it keeps everything nice and organized. And if I want to use this function in another notebook, whether it's the same project or a new project, it doesn't matter. Like, I can just copy and paste this, and I'm done. So if we go back to the main project file, there's these two files remaining. There's the README file, and then there's the requirements text file. So the README is basically a general overview of the project so that other people know what your project's about and also where to find things. And then the requirements text file is basically a text file that allows other data scientists to refer to in order to install the libraries that they need to run the project. So that's basically it for me. Every time I create a new project, I just copy and paste this template. It's worked well for me so far. I don't have any automation in place, although that is something that I'm looking to implement in the future. And I think I'm going to be creating more of these beginner data science videos. So if you're interested and you want to stay updated, please like and subscribe, turn on the notification bell. You can also follow me on my social media, and I've got some more data science videos that you can check out up here somewhere. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.